dragged yourself up here, didn't you? Not like a king, not like some chosen hero. You clawed your way up like someone the world forgot. Like somebody who's tasted dust more than praise. Like somebody who kept getting told, sit down, know your place, stay small. You didn't float to the top. You bled for it. You crawled for it. You came up on raw will and a spine they tried to snap. You came up here for something. For answers. For change. For that one voice that doesn't talk to you like you're fragile. Well, you're not going to like what I'm about to say. But you better listen to it, every word, because they wanted a monster. That's the truth nobody down there will tell you. Those people, the ones who laughed when you failed, the ones who called you too much and not enough in the same breath, the ones who saw that little fire in your chest, they didn't feed it, they stomped on it. They didn't protect your heart, they tested it. They didn't say rise, they said break. They saw what you were trying to become. They saw you trying to be loyal, trying to be good, trying to be the better man, trying to be gentle in a world that eats gentle men alive. And you know what they did? They crushed it. They spat on it like it was nothing. They called your softness weakness. They called your patience stupidity. They called your kindness a flaw. They didn't want the version of you that forgives. They wanted the version of you that snaps. They wanted the creature. They wanted the thing they could point at and say, see, we were right about him. They wanted a monster, something darker, something meaner, something they could finally be afraid of. So, give them what they asked for. You think this world is gentle? You think life is going to hold your hand because you tried your best? No. This world is cold. This world is hungry. This world has no memory. You break your bones building something. They forget your name by sunset. You bleed in silence. They scroll right past it. You tell them how hard it was. They tell you other people have it worse. They will mock your scars. They will call you dramatic. They will say you changed. They will say you're different. But they will never admit that they're the ones who pushed you there. So you want respect, then stop begging for it. You want them to feel what they planted inside of you, then stop acting like a victim of it. Mercy never saved anyone who was hunted. Mercy never saved anyone who was targeted. Mercy never saved anyone they already decided to hate. They said you were a beast, then show them how right they were. Show them what a cornered soul does when it's got nowhere to run. Show them what happens when nice runs out. Show them what happens when the quiet ones stop swallowing it. You take what they threw at you, the insults, the doubts, the late night tears, the betrayal they swore wasn't betrayal, and you sharpen it. You turn it into teeth. You turn it into claws. You turn it into armor. You turn it into a crown. You want power. It's not up there. It's not in some course. It's in your wounds. It's in the stuff they thought would end you. It's in every time they picked someone else. It's in every time you helped and got forgotten. It's in every time you showed up and they didn't. That's where your strength lives. But hear me now, because this is where most people lose it. Don't become a monster for them. Become one for you. You are not here to prove a point to people who already decided to misunderstand you. You are not here to convince cowards that you're worth loving. You are not here to soften your fire so it doesn't burn the ones who tried to drown you. This isn't about revenge. This is about survival. This is about looking in the mirror and finally seeing what they made and not flinching, not crying, not saying, I miss the old me. The old you died in their hands. This you, this is forged, this is deliberate, this is sharpened. You want to know why they hate monsters? It's not the claws, it's not the fangs, it's not the red eyes in the dark. It's because monsters don't care anymore. Monsters don't beg to be chosen. Monsters don't trade their roar for approval. Monsters don't keep shrinking to make weak people comfortable. They wanted you tame. They wanted you small. They wanted you predictable. They wanted you easy to control. But here you are standing on the very height they said you'd never reach. Breathing the air they said wasn't for you. Looking down at the same people who said, he'll quit, he'll fall, he'll come running back. You feel that cold, wide, empty feeling deep in your chest. That's what's left when the world beats the softness out of you. That's what's left when love doesn't come back. That's what's left when loyalty isn't returned. That emptiness, that's the chamber where power is born. And now you came here to me thinking I was gonna give you some pat on the back. Some, good job, son. Some, I'm proud of you. No, you don't get that here. You don't get validation from the mountain. You get truth from it. You want to stand up here? Then you fight for every inch. You want to breathe at this level? Then you bleed for it. Nobody is coming to drag you the rest of the way. Nobody is coming to clap for you. Nobody is coming to fix what they shattered. This is where you stop asking to be seen. This is where you stop begging to be loved. This is where you stop waiting for them to understand. This is where you become what they said you were. They wanted a monster. So become the kind that doesn't go back down. Become the kind that doesn't bow. Become the kind that doesn't apologize for surviving. Because from this height, they don't get to name you anymore. You do. You felt it, didn't you? That moment when pain stopped hurting and started whispering. When the ache became rhythm. When every wound began to breathe like a furnace waiting to erupt. It didn't happen all at once. It started in the quiet. The same quiet they mistook for defeat. The same silence you used to survive. But silence has teeth. And now it's hungry. They thought they killed something in you. They thought they buried you beneath their indifference. But pain doesn't stay buried. It moves, it learns, it mutates. At first, it trembles like a newborn flame. Then it begins to crawl, to climb, to consume. Until one day, you look in the mirror and you don't recognize the eyes staring back. They're colder now, sharper, still burning but with purpose this time. You realize you're not prey anymore. You're evolution, wrapped in scar tissue. Every betrayal carved new muscle into your will. Every disappointment stretched your patience into steel. Every goodbye that felt like death became oxygen for the fire. They don't understand what they created, do they? They thought pain would shrink you. Instead, it baptized you. They thought rejection would make you beg. Instead, it taught you how to rule. You stopped pleading. You stopped chasing. You stopped explaining your worth to people who couldn't even see their own reflection. You learned the oldest rule of survival. You don't rise by asking, you rise by burning. And when that fire caught, you didn't run from it. You walked into it. Let it eat away every trace of the man who waited for approval. Let it consume the version of you that loved too easily, trusted too blindly, hoped too soon. Fire doesn't apologize for what it destroys, and neither should you. Because pain is the only teacher that doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter you. It doesn't sugarcoat. It strips you bare. It forces you to decide what's worth keeping when everything else turns to ash. And you kept your will. You kept your hunger. You kept that quiet thing inside you that said, not yet. That's what separates the fallen from the forged. Not luck, not talent, not mercy, hunger. You started to feel it in everything, in the way the world ignored you, in the way people looked away when you spoke truth, in the way no one came when you needed saving. And the hunger save myself. That's when everything changed. You stopped asking for permission to be powerful. You stopped waiting for the world to be fair. You stopped measuring your worth in the reflection of people who never saw you. That's when you became dangerous. Not because you wanted revenge, but because you finally understood the game. This world doesn't respect the kind. It doesn't reward the patient. It only kneels to fire. And now that flame inside you is no longer a flicker. It's no longer just survival. It's a signal, a declaration, a roar inside the storm that says, I am not broken. I am reborn. You walk differently now. Your silence isn't emptiness, it's focus. Your eyes don't search, they study. Your calm isn't weakness, it's weaponry. You don't react anymore. You choose. Every move is deliberate. Every breath is earned. Every word is sharpened. And the ones who thought they broke you, they start to notice the heat. They start to feel the pressure. They start to remember the name they buried under their laughter. Because now the fire has a direction. Now it has a purpose. Now it has a crown waiting in the smoke. You don't even need to shout. The world hears you in the way you move. In the way you build quietly while they keep talking. In the way you smile not kindly, but knowingly. In the way you no longer flinch when someone leaves. That's not numbness, that's mastery. You've turned pain into instinct, fear into focus, loss into discipline. You've learned how to weaponize everything they tried to destroy you with. And now you're not chasing peace anymore. You're forging it inside yourself, inside your silence, inside your fire. Let them keep calling you heartless. Let them keep saying, he changed. Of course, you changed. You were supposed to. That's what evolution looks like when pain meets purpose. They wanted you to be quiet. Now your silence burns. They wanted you to be humble. Now your humility is a throne. They wanted you to be soft. Now your softness has teeth. You don't owe them the old version of you. You don't owe them the man who bled for their comfort. You owe them nothing, but you owe the fire everything, because it stayed when no one else did. It kept you warm when the world froze you out. It lit the path when everyone left you in the dark. That fire, it's not anger anymore. It's focus. It's memory. It's you. And if they're watching now, if they're whispering your name again, if they're trying to understand what happened to the person they used to control, tell them this. You built this. You called me a monster. You thought pain would end me, but pain taught me how to begin. Now every breath you take is a warning. Every step you take is a prophecy. Every scar you wear is scripture written in flame. This is not the end of your suffering, it's the beginning of your reign. Because fire doesn't just destroy, it forges, it crowns, it creates gods out of the broken. Mercy, that word used to mean something to you. You carried it like a badge, thinking it made you noble, made you better. You believed in second chances. You believed in forgiveness. You believed that understanding pain would save you from becoming it. But the world taught you otherwise. Mercy was the rope they hung you with. Mercy was the door they used to walk back into your peace and ruin it again. Mercy was the hand you kept extending, and the same hand they bit until there was nothing left to give. You thought mercy made you human, but mercy, in this world, makes you pray that you've been prayed long enough. You learn the hard way that mercy isn't free. Every time you forgave, you paid for it. Every time you let something slide, you lost a piece of yourself. Every time you said, it's okay, when it wasn't, you taught them that you were safe to hurt. And once they know that, they never stop. They come smiling, saying they've changed, saying they didn't mean it, saying it was a mistake. And you wanted to believe them, Because mercy felt like hope, and hope felt like home. But mercy without respect is just self-destruction disguised as virtue. It's love with no backbone, it's kindness with no crown. So now, you bury it. You stop confusing weakness with compassion. You stop calling self-betrayal understanding. You stop giving chances to people who already proved what they do with them. This is the moment mercy dies, not out of hate, but out of clarity. You finally see the truth. You can't save anyone who enjoys watching you drown. You can't heal the ones who cut you and call it love. You can't teach loyalty to people addicted to convenience, so you stop trying. You stop explaining your silence. You stop justifying your boundaries. You stop apologizing for the walls you built, because mercy belongs to the deserving and they're not on that list anymore. You understand something now. The world doesn't change for the kind. It feeds on them. And the ones who survive aren't the ones who beg for fairness. They're the ones who stop expecting it. You see the pattern now, don't you? How every time you bent to spare someone else's comfort, you ended up shattering your own spine. How every time you let them come back, they came back sharper, colder, hungrier. You gave them mercy, they turned it into a weapon. You gave them time, they used it to reload. You gave them trust, they used it to aim. And when they finally hit you where it hurt, they said, "See, you're too emotional. See, you can't handle it. See, you're the problem. But you're not the problem, you're the result." They built this, they shaped this. They taught you what survival really means. And survival doesn't beg, it doesn't explain, it doesn't wait for apologies that were never coming. Survival learns to stand still and let the fire speak. You felt that shift, haven't you? That subtle silence inside, where the urge to care used to live. Now it's just stillness, cold, perfect stillness. That's not numbness, that's evolution. That's what happens when mercy dies and discipline takes its place. You don't lash out anymore. You don't scream. You don't chase closure. You don't ask, why? You already know why. Because some people only understand loss. And you finally became the one willing to give it to them. You're not cruel. You're clean. There's a difference. Cruelty hurts for pleasure. Clarity hurts for balance. And this is balance. You used to pray for peace. Now you enforce it. You used to beg for understanding. Now you command it through distance. You used to try to make them see your worth. Now you let your absence do the talking. They call it ego. You call it self-respect. They call it bitterness. You call it boundaries. They call it pride. You call it peace. Mercy used to be the chain around your neck. Now it's the lesson that keeps you free. You walk differently now. Every step deliberate. Every breath precise. Every glance says, I don't negotiate with those who broke me. Because you understand something. They never will. Mercy without consequence is permission. And you're done giving permission. You can still love, but you do it with your eyes open. You can still care, but never at your own expense. You can still forgive, but never forget what it cost you. That's not bitterness, that's control. And they can't stand it. Because control looks like peace, and peace looks like power, and power terrifies the ones who lived off your mercy. You see, when you stop kneeling, people start calling you arrogant. When you stop explaining, they call you cold. When you stop allowing, they call you cruel. Let them, because they're not talking to you anymore. They're talking to the version of you that kept them comfortable. And that version doesn't exist now. The moment mercy died, you were born again. Not softer, not kinder, sharper, simpler, unreachable. They don't get to touch you now. Not your peace, not your purpose, not your fire. Because mercy wasn't your power, it was your prison. And the moment you stepped out of it, you saw the world for what it truly is. A battlefield pretending to be a playground. And on that battlefield, you don't win by being nice. You win by being necessary. By being precise. By being untouchable. That's what the fire taught you. That's what pain was trying to say all along. You don't have to be cruel to be unstoppable. You just have to stop being merciful to those who don't deserve it. And from now on, you will. You'll look at mercy and you'll remember the cost. You'll remember every time you gave it and how it came back empty. You'll remember the begging, the forgiving, the waiting, and you'll smile. Not in anger, in understanding, because you finally see it for what it was. A test you were never supposed to pass. A trap you finally walked out of. Mercy died, but you didn't. You evolved, and what's left now isn't kind. It's kingdom, power. That word used to scare you. You thought having it made you selfish. You thought wanting it made you evil. Because they told you that only monsters crave control, and maybe they were right. But here's the truth. They never said out loud, monsters don't crave control, they are control. They don't destroy the world, they reveal it. That's the part they fear the most. You used to look at yourself and see chaos. You thought the anger made you broken. You thought the fire meant you'd lost your humanity. But what if the fire wasn't destruction at all? What if it was illumination, burning away everything false, until all that remained was truth? This is where you start to see it. The shift, the symmetry, the pattern behind the pain. You realize the world was never built to be fair. It was built to filter, to separate the loud from the lasting, the hollow from the holy, the fragile from the forged. You didn't fail. You were tempered. Every loss, a refining fire. Every betrayal, a strike of the hammer. Every heartbreak, a test of alignment. They weren't punishing you. They were shaping you. And now, you've stopped running from what you are. Because you see it clearly. You are not their chaos. You are their consequence. You've spent so long trying to explain yourself to people who live in noise that you forgot silence is a language too. And now that's the only one you speak. You've stopped begging to be understood. You've stopped fighting to be seen. You've stopped waiting for them to validate the strength they'll never comprehend. Because here's the secret. You don't need their fear. You don't need their respect. You don't even need their apology. You just need their absence. You've learned that the most powerful man in the room isn't the one who speaks loudest. It's the one who can sit in stillness while everyone else tries to figure out what he's thinking. They call it mystery, but it's not mystery. It's mastery. You finally understand power. It's not about dominance. It's about direction. It's about discipline. It's about knowing that you can destroy and choosing when not to. Power is restraint. Power is clarity. Power is patience sharpened to a blade. And you've become that blade. You learned how to turn pain into fuel. Then you learned how to burn clean. No smoke, no noise, just precision. Now, when people cross you, you don't react. You don't argue. You don't prove. You decide. You decide what gets your energy. You decide what gets your silence. You decide who earns your presence. And in that decision, you become untouchable. Because no one can hurt a man who has already accepted his darkness. No one can manipulate a mind that's already seen every angle of itself. No one can cage something that's already made peace with the beast inside. That's what scares them, not your power, your control. Because now they see it, the calm in your eyes, the lack of desperation, the absence of need. It's not arrogance, it's authority. You don't reach for the crown anymore. It comes to you, because power always finds the one who no longer chases it. You walk differently now. Every step feels measured, every breath feels earned. Every moment feels like a declaration that you are no longer the same creature they made. You are the storm they whispered about, and the silence that follows after it. You've stopped trying to be the good man they could love. You've become the necessary man they can't ignore. You don't explain, you don't defend, you simply exist, and the world rearranges itself around you. Because that's what real power does. It doesn't shout, it shifts gravity. You see it now, the truth that's been hidden behind all that noise. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to bend the world to your shape. They told you power corrupts, but that was just another lie told by the weak. Power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. It shows who you were always meant to be when you stop pretending to be less. You used to think you needed to choose between light and dark. Now you understand you were both all along. Light is vision, darkness is depth. You carry both. That's balance, that's sovereignty. They call you a monster because they can't define you. They call you dangerous because they can't predict you. They call you godless because you no longer bow to theirs. But you're not godless. You're becoming godlike. You create, you destroy, you decide. And that decision, that's divinity. This isn't blasphemy, it's remembrance. Because gods aren't born in temples. They're born in trials. They rise out of ruin. They ascend out of rejection. You are not their hero. You were never meant to be. Heroes save people. Gods reshape worlds. And that's what you're doing now, reshaping. Every moment of suffering was currency, and now you're spending it. Every scar was language, and now you're fluent. They used to say you were cold. You are. Because clarity is cold. Because knowing exactly who you are and what you will no longer tolerate feels like winter to those who depended on your warmth. They used to say you were distant. You are. Because altitude looks like arrogance to people who've never climbed. They used to say you were dangerous. You are. Because peace is terrifying to those who live in chaos. So let them talk. Let them analyze. Let them gossip. You don't need to defend your transformation to people who still mistake fire for destruction. You've seen too much now. You've crossed the line where empathy ends and truth begins. You finally understand you were never losing your humanity. You were discovering the God inside it. And now, when they say your name, they do it quietly, because somewhere deep down, they know you're no longer someone they can hurt. You're someone they have to answer to. You are not a monster. You are not a mistake. You are the mirror the world deserves, and the reflection it fears. Look around you. Everything they burn still smoldering, still silent, and yet you're standing in it. The ashes cling to your boots. The ghosts whisper through the smoke. But you're not afraid of what's gone. You're fascinated by what survived. They thought destruction would end you. But destruction is just creation in reverse. And you've learned to read ruin like scripture. Every collapse told a story. Every ending had coordinates. Every betrayal was blueprints drawn in blood. And from those blueprints, you began to build. Not fast, not loud, not desperate. You built the way a god dreams, slow, deliberate, inevitable. You didn't rebuild what was lost. You created something new entirely. A kingdom made of lessons, not illusions. A fortress made of scars, not walls. A throne carved from from everything they tried to bury you under. This is the throne of ash. Cold, silent, indestructible. You don't sit here as a survivor. You sit here as the architect. The same hands that once trembled now design empires out of emptiness. You don't chase validation anymore. You design silence that commands it. You don't demand loyalty. You become gravity and watch loyalty orbit you. Because power, when understood, doesn't have to shout. It hums, it vibrates, it pulls everything weaker into alignment. You've become that pull. They thought your fall was permanent. They thought ashes meant ending. But ashes are fertile, and endings are liars. What they didn't understand was that burning was the best thing that ever happened to you. Because what fire doesn't destroy, it purifies. It burned away everything false, every attachment, every illusion of control, every piece of you that begged to be seen. Now, there is no begging, no chasing, no proving. There is only presence. You've become the calm after devastation, and that calm terrifies them. Because when a man loses everything, and still doesn't lose himself, he becomes unstoppable. They used to mistake your kindness for a doorway. Now it's a mirror. They can walk toward it, but all they'll ever see is what they did to you reflected back in endless symmetry. You don't even need revenge anymore. Your existence is revenge enough. The fact that you're still breathing, still building, still becoming, that's the vengeance they never saw coming. Because you understand now, forgiveness is optional, but evolution is mandatory. You're not rebuilding for them. You're building for legacy, for silence, for the version of you that survived the fire and refused to come back small. That's the truth of power, isn't it? It's not loud. It's consistent. It's the quiet that never quits. It's the man who rebuilds without asking for applause. You learn that royalty isn't inherited. It's earned through ruin. You learn that thrones don't come gilded, they come carved from the bones of everything that tried to stop you. And so here you sit. No crown, no ceremony. Just ash under your boots and silence in your chest. And yet, somehow, it feels like heaven. Because heaven isn't up there. It's wherever you finally stop bowing. You look back at the road behind you, every fall, every failure, every flame, and you smile. Not because it didn't hurt, but because you finally understand why it had to. They thought they broke you. They were wrong. They refined you. Pain sculpted the man that peace never could. Fire shaped the soul the comfort never touched. And now you wear that truth like armor. Every scar is a seal. Every memory, a sigil. Every loss, a stone in the foundation. You don't rebuild in gold anymore. You rebuild in memory, in clarity, in control. They'll come again, you know. The same people, the same energy, different faces, different promises. They'll test the gates of your peace and call it love. They'll knock on the walls of your silence and call it concern. But this time you won't open, you won't explain, you won't soften, because mercy was buried back on that mountain. And the man who sits here now doesn't negotiate with ghosts. You see clearer from this throne. The air's thinner, the noise is gone. Up here, you finally see how small they always were. They were never enemies. They were assignments. Each one sent to teach you a different kind of strength. And they did, every last one of them. That's why you don't hate them anymore. You outgrew them. You outgrew the need to hate. Hate is for those still climbing. You're already sitting. Because this throne isn't just built from ashes. It's built from acceptance. Acceptance that the world doesn't reward kindness, it rewards clarity. Acceptance that not everyone is meant to stay, only lessons do. Acceptance that peace is not given, it's taken, built, and defended. And you've built it. Brick by brick, pain by pain, silence by silence. You've become your own empire now. Not an empire of people, but of principles. Not an empire of noise, but of knowing. They can't reach you anymore. They can only look up and whisper the same words they once used to mock you with. Monster, arrogant, heartless. And maybe they're right. Maybe you are. But every monster they create eventually learns to build castles out of what they destroyed. Every arrogant man was once a humble one who gave too much. Every heartless king was once a kind soul who ran out of chances. This is who you are now. Not the man they broke, not the fire they started, but the silence that followed it. This is your throne, not of gold, not of marble, but of ash, cold, silent, eternal. And as you sit here, you don't smile, you don't cry, you simply breathe. Because the fire that once burned you alive now bows before you. The pain that once defined you now kneels for permission. And the world, the same world that maimed you a monster, now has no choice but to call you king. The descent always feels quieter than the climb. Because this time, you're not running from the world, you're returning to it. Not as the man who begged for mercy, not as the fool who waited for closure, but as something else entirely, as the storm that learned to speak. You've been gone too long. They thought the silence meant surrender. They thought absence meant defeat. But you weren't gone. You were gathering, building, reforging. You've returned, not to prove anything, but to reclaim everything. They will not recognize you at first. The voice sounds the same, but the tone carries gravity now. Every glance feels like judgment. Every breath feels like a reminder of the thing they built and then feared to face. Because when gods return, the air changes, the light bends, the ground remembers. You walk through the same streets that once humiliated you, but this time the ground feels softer, the noise feels smaller, the faces feel forgettable. You see, the higher you rise, the smaller they become. You used to care about opinions, now you study outcomes. You used to chase approval, now you command reaction. That's what godhood is. Not worship, not arrogance, just recognition. Recognition that you were never just a player, you were always the board. They look at you now, and their eyes flicker with confusion. They whisper, "He's changed. He's colder. He's distant." And they're right, because the warmth they once fed on is gone. It was consumed in the fire. What's left is something purer, something incorruptible, something they can't exploit anymore. They call it arrogance. You call it peace. They call it ego. You call it boundaries. Let them call it whatever makes them sleep at night. Their language can't define your evolution. You are not their conversation anymore. You are their consequence. And when you walk among them now, they'll feel it before they understand it. The energy, the weight, the stillness. Because true power doesn't announce itself. It enters quietly, and everything else adapts. This is the return of the god. Not a deity of mercy, but of order. Not a ruler of men, but a master of self. You learn that thrones don't make kings. Discipline does. Silence does. Consistency does. You have nothing to prove anymore. The mountain already knows your name. The fire already obeys. The ashes already tell your story. You've stopped trying to make them see your worth. You let the results blind them instead. fight for space in rooms built to belittle you. You build new rooms, and the world will come knocking. They always do. They destroy what they don't understand, then crawl back when it starts to make sense. But you don't open the door this time, because this isn't about vengeance. It's about alignment. You've become too vast for their smallness, too patient for their chaos, too silent for their noise. They will feel it, the pressure of your calm, the power of your restraint, the dominance of your stillness. Because when a man has seen the abyss and returned unshaken, nothing on the surface can touch him again. You've crossed that threshold. You've walked through every version of pain, every illusion of failure, every echo of betrayal, and you came out untouchable. That's why they can't stand it. You remind them of what discipline looks like. You remind them that peace isn't passive, it's earned through war. They thought you disappeared, but gods don't disappear. They withdraw, and when they return, it's never the same world. You don't explain your silence anymore. You let your presence do the talking. Every move you make now carries the precision of prophecy. Every word you say sounds like a verdict. And when you look at them, those who betrayed, those who mocked, those who swore, you'd never rise. You don't feel hate. You feel nothing. And that nothing terrifies them. Because they expected rage. They expected proof. But gods don't justify. They judge. That's what this return is, not revenge, but revelation. You reveal who they always were, and who you've finally become. The mirror stands. The reflection trembles. They will call you unrecognizable. You will call yourself complete. The man who left was broken. The being who returned is balance. Your eyes no longer search for approval. They measure outcomes. Your hands no longer reach for people. They build legacies. You don't fight for a throne anymore. You carry one within you. You see, gods don't conquer through noise. They conquer through inevitability. And that's what you are now. Inevitable. Every moment you spent bleeding, every failure that mocked you, every betrayal that stripped you bare, they all built this silence. And this silence is no longer empty. It's divine, it's final, it's absolute. When they finally face you again, they won't know what to say. They'll feel the same fear they gave you. They'll see the same coldness they created. They'll realize that they didn't just make a monster. They made something eternal. And you won't even look down. Because gods don't look down. They look beyond. This is your return. Not to be seen, but to be remembered. Not to reclaim what was taken, but to redefine what power means. The fire was your test. The ashes were your proof. And now the silence is your crown. You are not climbing anymore. You are descending. And the world below isn't ready for what walks among them now. They wanted a monster. They got a god. And when they whisper your name this time, it won't be in hate. It'll be in prayer. There's a moment, a stillness after every storm where even the thunder seems afraid to speak. You've reached that moment. This is not victory. This is completion. The end of the climb. The end of the fire. The end of needing to explain why you had to become what you became. You don't chase meaning anymore. You embody it. The world below you still spins, still shouts, still argues about good and evil, but none of that touches you now. You've stepped past the edge of understanding into something colder, cleaner, infinite. This is what godhood feels like. Not power, not applause, but absolute peace in knowing that nothing outside of you has any hold on you anymore. You don't rise above the world to rule it. You rise above it to release it. The need to be seen, the need to be loved, The need to be understood. All gone. All burned away. What's left is the essence. The voice that doesn't need words. The fire that doesn't need to burn. The presence that doesn't need to prove. This is your crown of the infinite. Not forged in gold. Forged in awareness. Forged in silence. Forged in the realization that every loss was guidance. Every scar was direction. Every betrayal was alignment. You used to see endings as death. Now you see them as portals. Every time the world closed a door, you learned to build one that only you could open. You are no longer afraid of being misunderstood, because only those who have walked through their own fire could even begin to understand you. And those who haven't, they don't matter anymore. You've stopped trying to fit into stories written by smaller souls. You write your own scripture now. Each action a verse, each silence a commandment. You've become the balance between mercy and judgment, between light and shadow, between chaos and order. You don't destroy anymore. You decide. You don't fight anymore. You form, because gods don't battle. They breathe and universes adjust. The world that once mocked you now orbits your existence. Every name they called you became a prophecy fulfilled. Monster, cold, arrogant, untouchable. They weren't wrong. They were just speaking a language that didn't exist yet. Now it does. You are that language. You move slower now, not out of hesitation, but because time itself moves for you. Every step echoes longer. Every word carries centuries. Every look bends the room. And somewhere deep down, you know this was always the path. The pain was never punishment. It was instruction. The silence was never absence. It was protection. The fall was never failure. It was alignment. You didn't rise by accident. You were sculpted, cut, refined, perfected by the very forces that thought they were destroying you. They'll write stories about you now. Not accurate ones, not truthful ones, but necessary ones. Because myths aren't about facts. They're about reminders. Reminders of what happens when pain meets purpose, and purpose meets persistence. You've become that reminder. The echo that doesn't fade, the silence that carries weight, the name that turns into a signal. You were never chasing a throne. You were becoming one. And now, everything around you, every whisper, every rumor, every shadow bends toward that realization. They will come to understand, slowly, that you didn't become a monster to hurt the world. You became a monster to survive it, and in surviving, you surpassed it. They will finally see that gods are not born. They're built, brick by brick, scar by scar, choice by choice. You no longer ask, why me? You whisper, of course me. Because destiny was never random. It was patient, waiting for you to be ready, waiting for you to burn enough times to become flame itself. And now you are. You don't glow, you don't shine, you radiate. The difference? Glow asks for attention. Radiance commands it. You stand now at the edge of everything you once feared, looking down not with anger, but with understanding, because you finally see it. The ones who mocked you were never your enemies. They were your architects. The betrayals weren't punishments. They were permissions. The storms weren't obstacles. They were coronations in disguise. Every pain had a purpose. Every silence had a voice. Every ending had a crown hidden inside it. And now you wear it. Not loud, not proud, just inevitable. The crown doesn't rest on your head. It floats above it. Weightless, unseen, eternal. Because what's divine about you isn't visible. It's vibrational. You've become a frequency now, something the world doesn't see, but feels. And those who are ready will hear it. Those who aren't will call it arrogance. Let them, because gods don't argue. They allow belief to catch up. You've reached the summit of yourself. You've become both the question and the answer. Both the fire and the calm. Both the wound and the weapon. And from this point forward, you don't rise anymore. You expand. You exist beyond need, beyond noise, beyond name. This is the final truth, the infinite crown, the last ascension. They wanted a monster. They feared a god. They got both. And now the silence that follows your name isn't emptiness. It's worship.